Welcome back, everybody. Sunday Sports Night Cover 2. Time now to go on the clock alongside Jason Wilde, ESPNMilwaukee.com, Rob Demoski, ESPN.com, and Mark Daniels, WTAQ.
Blinded by the light.
He came back with a statement.
Did you get that in Oregon?
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to make sure people missed me, or at least remembered me when I came back.
All right, we're gonna let you start because I can't see anybody else over there. Clay Matthews' injury, reportedly a broken thumb. What do you know? What's the danger here?
Well, I think Rob was the first one to get further confirmation that it's an issue of whether he needs surgery or not. And we talked in the press box about Morgan Burnett, who a couple of years ago had a broken thumb and was able to play through it because he didn't need surgery, put on the big cast. It's certainly not ideal, but as long as he can avoid surgery, I think there would be hope that he can play.
Yeah, the source I talked to said this evening that they're still trying to decide whether that's necessary. If it's necessary, they probably are going to have to go in and put some sort of a pin in there and repair it, and that would be problematic for the rest of the season. But if not, they hope that he can play with it. And obviously, we know what Clay means to this defense. So this is a decision that needs to be
I'm
made.
happy he could still run because that is what he does best. He'll be able to grab and at least wrap up a little bit, even clubbed up.
Right.
But if it was anything affecting the wheels, then it's really going to be devastating.
But you could tell that it was bothering him if we went back and looked at the replay. He takes his chin strap buckles on the right side of his helmet, but he takes his left hand to take it off, and then he went straight to the locker room shortly thereafter.
But the other guys who played today, Mike Neal, Nick Perry, and that was a topic we talked about last Sunday, was Nick Perry going to lose his job? Well, he did lose his starting job, but he may have gotten it back the way he played. And, of course, Mike Neal played really well, too.
I thought it was each of their best individual performances. Now, you could say, well, it's not a great sample size. Nick Perry only played 6 games last year, is injured. Mike Neal's been injured a lot. But those guys showed that they took the next step in their evolution as players, especially Mike Neal. In the transition, I think that we can see that maybe he's even a little better, Mark, than I thought he would be.
Remember how awkward it was watching Aaron Campman trying to run and back up? He just could not do it. But from the first time we saw Neal stand up, Cro-Magnon-ish, he was able to do it. He's got some athletic ability that is surprising me constantly.
Well, think about how we felt on Monday when we didn't think maybe Clay was going to be able to play with the hamstring. You're talking about Mike Neal, who still was kind of unproven, had a couple of shining moments, and then Nick Perry, who we're talking about losing his job. Now, certainly you want Clay Matthews to be healthy enough to play, but you have 2 guys who went out there in a game where he left with this injury, and you feel a little bit better about both of them.
Okay, now the inside linebacker position might be a little different. You got 2 guys down today, Brad Jones, Robert Francois is obviously not going to play again. But in all this, and Tricia just talked about it, Rob, they held the Lions to 120 yards below their average, under 300 yards. That's back-to-back teams held under 300 yards. Has Dom Capers got this thing where he wants it?
Well, I mean, look, they played great defensively. A lot of guys really stepped in and contributed. But this is a Lions team that was, you can't even say they were at half strength. They were at about a quarter strength because they lose one guy. Also, Nate Burleson. I mean, they're missing their top 2 receivers to start the season. I'm not, I like the direction that this defense is headed. I've liked the direction that they've been headed all year, but I'm not ready to make any grand statements based on what happened today.
The Lions just look lifeless. Like they got the news that he wasn't playing, and it was like, oh, okay. Well, so much for that.
The rest of us have to play?
Don't underestimate the return of Morgan Burnett. I really think that makes a big difference. And Dom is getting very aggressive over the last couple of weeks. He's sending bodies, and they're getting home. And so I think that's got everybody a bit energized.
All 5 sacks today came from the linebacker position.
And Burnett had a great play on that play in the end zone.
Mark, TJ Lang, Josh Sitton basically rendered Sue and Farrelly null and void today. How'd they do it?
They did it with combination blocks, most notably. TJ Lang talked about just slight adjustments in some of the plays, and not play calls so much, but just in some of the blocking assignments and some of the blocking calls that they got on each of those 2 guys with tandem blocks on several occasions. And quite honestly, those 2 are better pass rushers than they are run stuffers because they give up a lot of yards. Matt Forte gashed him last week. I thought the Packers would be able to run on him, and they did very successfully.
But boy, I didn't think they'd be able to run it this consistently over the course of this many games. We're now talking 3.5 games of really solid run production. And yes, I know it starts inside, but this offensive line, and I think this is something that we all are probably going to delve into as this week goes on and start to write a little bit more about those guys. But when you talk about what they're doing right now up front, the entire group, I just think you have to be very impressed with all 5 of those guys up front.
Think about how much concern there was,
Right.
Whether it was the offseason with the shuffling or then Bulaga gets hurt. Rogers gave David a great compliment. He said, I don't even give him a second thought over there, which is a total understated compliment, but that's exactly
the
what
best
offensive
compliment you
linemen
get.
like.
Right.
I was having the same conversation with TJ Lang. I said, you almost had, you're 1 yard away from 3 straight 100-yard rushers, 3 different guys. Doesn't that say something about the offensive line? And he said,
2 tackles with
you're talking to the wrong guys.
10 career starts for a 3rd or 4th ranked offense in the league. That's pretty impressive.
All right, we're going to skip ahead to ad-libs here real quick. 1-word answers or 2 words as best you can. Mark, James Jones will blank paid at the end of season.
Get paid.
Get paid a lot.
Why don't you say get paid where?
You don't need anything from me.
Jason, Jarrett Boykin owes Eddie Lacey blank. Especially we were talking about 99 yards.
He owes him at least
13.
1 yard.
He owes him 13.
Technically 13,
Yeah.
but it would have been nice to get him to 100.
Owes him 13 and a dinner.
Yeah. Bad hanky.
That wasn't a great call either, I might add.
No. Mark, Mike McCarthy blank the Lions.
Outcoached.
Owns.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word.
Welcomes.
14-1 against.
And the one was the game Rodgers didn't
Finish. That's right. And finally, the red zone has become blank for offense. Jason.
The quiet zone.
Ooh.
Kryptonite.
That's what our producer came up with.
The
Mark?
dead zone.
Dead zone. All right, very
That was
good.
even better.
Gentlemen, thanks very much. We'll talk to you next week.